Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormamritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet compassionate face. My subject this morning is continuous meditation. First, I think it will be well if I tell you a little about meditation. The English word meditation does not really convey the sense of the Sanskrit word which we generally use, which is Dhyâna. And this Dhyâna, and let us use the English word meditation with this specific Sanskrit sense. It means that it is a continuity of consciousness or thought without any interruption. If we can hold one thought, and that thought follows itself, and no other thought intervenes, then it will be considered a meditation. It has been found that since mind is continually changing, it requires a great deal of training before this kind of continuity can be maintained. Sometimes it is illustrated by a flow of oil. Toilo dharavat anavachinna. If you see oil poured from one vessel into another, you will notice that it almost seems as if there is no movement in that flow, as if it is just a steady, stationary column made out of oil. And yet we know that oil is continually flowing. Mind also, in the mind also, one thought is followed by the same thought, and by the same thought, and by the same thought. And the thoughts are so identical or so close to this identity that we do not notice any change, although by the nature of the mind there is, of course, a continuity of the mind and a flow there. Sometimes it also has been illustrated by a light of a lamp, flame of a lamp which is burning in a place where there is not the slightest tremor of the air. The air is still, and if you at that time look at a flame, say of a candle, you will find it is pointing upwards without the slightest flicker or slightest change in its shape. That also has been considered to be illustrative of the state of meditation. No other thought comes to create any disturbance in the movement of the mind, so that the mind goes on moving in the same direction without any kind of interference or changing of direction. Now this state, as I have said, is not easily achieved, because our mind in its present state of working is very changeful. As a matter of fact, many of us think that there should be this change. The common mind or the natural mind thrives on change. And although we do recognize a concentration or the ability to hold the same thought is certainly useful sometimes, because we do want to have the power of application or attention, on the whole we consider it unwholesome that the mind should be thinking of the same thing. We think it is monotonous, and thereby the mind ceases to enrich itself. Enrichment of the mind is considered to be dependent upon variety of interests. And so from our very birth we are taught to move our mind, to change our mind, to think of many things, to have many interests. Of course, such a state of the mind is antagonistic to achievement in meditation. No wonder you find therefore people in the name of religion relinquishing every other interest and devoting themselves entirely to God. People say that he has gone the deep end when a person acts like this. And of course with our worldly wisdom we say, nothing excessive is good. Moderation in everything is moderation is good. Why should you give yourself entirely to God? And net result is that they lose their head. No wonder people become insane when they become too much interested in spiritual things. So we say, and yet it is a fact that unless you have given your all, you cannot have a glimpse of him who is the all. One can never have any knowledge of God until he has given his fullness of heart and fullness of mind to God. This change from the so-called normal state to this other state which is something abnormal and we think supernormal, it is a profound change, and it requires years and years and years of struggle, even on the part of one who is very earnest about spirituality, and certainly it requires many lives for one whose heart is still in the world, although partly it has been directed towards God. Well, I should say that even if it were to take several lives to reach this wonderful condition where the heart and mind shall seek God and nothing else, I think several lives would be a little price to pay for such achievement. Of course, I am thinking as a Hindu when I think of several lives. And particularly when I think that our present condition, the restless mind, has been the outcome of millions of lives lived before. It seems appalling, isn't it? We sometimes think that one life is enough. Then Hindus think there have been million lives before, and who knows how many more lives in front of us. But we rather take a leisurely view of all those things. We have a lazy sense of time in the Orient. 500 years it is nothing. One Swami Vivekananda was staying in one of the Atlantic coast towns. He went for summer there. And there are many people, the professors and this and that there, and he used to have wonderful conversation. And he was speaking one day of Indian history. Well, the way he spoke about the coming of the Mahavans and the British and so on, it seems as if they are just only occupation for 3 or 4 days. Some of his hearers became rather astonished at this view of several centuries. He said, what? Swami Vivekananda retorted, what? A few centuries? Why? Compared with time, compared with eternity, that's nothing. Well, of course that is characteristic of the Hindu view. You say a few centuries is nothing. A few thousand years of lives, a few thousand incarnations, that's nothing. And if it takes a few incarnations more, few lives more to achieve this wonderful goal, one should rather say that one had got away with little punishment. Yes, that's the view. And I would say that is not typically an Oriental view. You should not say, well, the Orientals think that way, and we shall not think. I say that all these thinkings proceed from a certain fundamental attitude. If you ever catch a glimpse of the eternal, or even if you learn to think of eternity, and if you make room for eternity in your ordinary processes of thinking, you'll be surprised how little touched you are by many years or several lives. It doesn't matter very much. A state of mind comes in which flow of time has very little significance. Yes, a few lives really don't matter. I should say it is a very cheap price to pay for such a wonderful reward, the knowledge of God, direct knowledge of God. Well, it takes a long time, and I am not saying this to discourage you or to prompt you to laziness, but I am just telling you that you should be patient and you should learn to think in other terms of time than you usually think. Impatience is bred out of too much sense of the present sense of time, too much of this present sense of time. And the tempo is so quick, and we want so many things to happen in such a short time. You look at the lives of animals and worms and insects, within a few minutes they are born, they grow up, and they age and they die. Well, I think the lower the status of a being, the quicker is the sense of his time. And that's an unfortunate thing, that we are so much harassed by the sense of time in the present age. So we have this sense, that sense of infinite patience, but not laziness. We try to make every moment to count spiritually, yet we know the achievement is a very strenuous one, and it takes a long time, and we do not become discouraged. We, on the other hand, remain enthusiastic about it. What is this sense? It is this change. It is in relation to this change that I have thought of this subject, continuous meditation. Now, meditation can be thought of either externally or internally. That is to say, in its exterior or interior aspect. Generally, we are so much influenced by the idea of its exterior that we think that meditation can be done only when one sits quiet in the posture as we see in the traditional image of Buddha, with closed eyes, or as some people sarcastically say, meditating one's own navel, which is rarely done, I must say. And that is the exterior aspect of meditation. And some may practice this meditation continuously, but their number is so small that I think one need not consider it as a goal, as a practical goal. In exterior meditation, in the Bhagavad Gita, in other books, they lay down certain precise conditions. It should be a pure place, it should be a quiet place. It should be a place where the wind does not blow. It is not too hot, and there are no scents, and there are no ants or other insects, and there are no wild animals and so on. There you spread a seat for yourself where you can comfortably sit. And about that seat also, sometimes some kinds of seats are propitious than the others. Some skin, deer skin or tiger skin, or some seats made of a sacred grass called kusha grass. And such things you make seats of and you sit on them. But generally the condition is that it should be a seat which is comfortable to sit on, but without being too comfortable, that is to say too yielding, because that is not good for one's own body to sit on such a seat for a long time. And there you take a convenient posture of your own body. There are infinite number of postures taught in Hatha Yoga, for example. Various postures can be made of the body by long practices. No doubt they have their benefits. For spiritual purpose, it has been said a person should sit in a posture which is easy and comfortable to him. It does not have to be an intricate thing. Of course, if you have learned it, that's one thing. If you have not learned it, just learn to sit in the most comfortable posture. Of this posture, the important thing to remember is that the spinal column and the head should be straight. So many things take place in the nervous system that run along the spinal column, that any crooked state of the spine oftentimes interferes with this nervous action. It has been considered, therefore, that the spinal column should be straight. Also, there is a great deal of special movement of blood, therefore the heart and the lungs should be kept free. A crooked state, of course, somehow interferes with the full function and the free function of these organs. And it does not require any much to say that the head should be kept straight. If you do it sometimes in meditation, you see some people hold their head like this. That also sometimes has been considered a good posture to keep the head steady. Well, more often, however, it is said that the head should be kept straight. Further, the spinal column of the head should not be allowed to touch anything. It should remain free, untouched by back of a chair and so on and so forth. In India, we think best posture of the body, without reference to any racial habit, is to sit cross-legged and not to sit in a chair with the legs straight out. We think that when one learns to sit in that way with the spinal column straight, the body acquires a certain balance, which is the best balance of the body, and then it does not get tired out, because body also in any posture will get tired out. You have to find out a posture of the body in which it will so balance itself that for a long time you can keep the body in that posture without getting fatigued. We believe that this posture which you see in the meditative image of Buddha is the best posture considered. That's the physical exterior. As regards the eyes, it is said, best thing and the easiest thing is to close the eyes. Some say that you should really put your gaze on the tip of your nose, that is better. Swami Vivekananda said that if you do that, the optical nerves are stretched in a certain way which has an effect on the brain and brings about stillness in the thought centers of the brain. And thereby you find through physical means you are able to quiet the mind best. Another posture of the eyes has been considered exteriorly is to focus it in the junction of the eyebrows. That also produces the same condition because of the position of the pupil, same condition in the brain, thought center, and quiets the mind. But however, as against these postures of the eyes, it has been argued that sometimes they produce a state of headache, and headache keeps your mind thinking of headache, although it might not allow you to think of other things. And of course you must admit that thought of headache is not always pleasant while you are trying to meditate. So those who cannot do those things, or those who have not been habituated to this posture of the eyes, they should just close the eyes and let it go at that. At this moment, I think it is very well to say, although physical aspects of spiritual practices have their benefit, one should learn to become independent of them as far as it is possible. One should not depend too much on the exterior. One should really try to control or quiet the mind with the help of the mind. That is the best. This is a general observation without prejudice to the proposition that one could take some help also from the body, since mind is so much associated with the body and so much influenced by the body. There is no reason why some physiological help, even in the quieting of the mind, should not be accepted. Well, what takes place in the mind? Of course, you not only close your eyes, you are supposed to close all other senses. The eyes have their lids, shutting of vision, but the other sense organs do not seem to have any such protection. Well, some therefore put cotton in their ear holes and thereby stop hearing. I would not say that it is too bad, except that I think you will feel very inconvenient. So all you have to do as regards the other senses like smell, sound. Of course, after form comes sound. Form can be kept out by closing the eyes, but the sound cannot be kept out except with an effort of one's own mind. You have to learn to so concentrate your mind on the object of your meditation that even if someone speaks nearby, you do not hear it. Afterwards, you find it has become habitual. It does not become very difficult to practice it. As regards the body, of course, you sit in a place where you do not have any bodily sensation like ants or some worms and insect crawling on your body. That is the instruction why you should meditate in a place where there are no worms and insects, and where the heavy wind is not blowing, because if the wind blows, then also you feel the movement of air and you are disturbed. Therefore you will find sometimes they say meditate in a cave. Sound does not go there, air is absolutely still there. And they really prescribe it. In many of our temples, if you go, you will find they do not have any window. There is just only one door to enter in, and no other aperture in the walls of the temple. Well, all these things produce a state of absolute calmness there. It is really very noticeable and of course very good for meditation. I do not know how it is from the standpoint of health, but then it is very good for meditation. Well, as regards the other senses, you have to withdraw your mind by your own effort and let it go at that. What do you do within? What is the interior? Interior is this. It is one thing to say that you want to vacate the mind, but that's the wrong thing to do, because mind can never be vacant. The mind itself was created with a specific purpose. The mind came in order to grasp or comprehend reality. Of course, mind originated on ignorance. The reality is we ourselves, and therefore we did not require something else to know it. But when we forgot ourselves, this forgetting which we call by the name of ignorance, or maya or avidya in Sanskrit, that forgetting make us think as if we are not the reality, that is somewhere else is the reality, and because we shall not allow ourselves to be divorced from reality, we reach towards it, and out of that came what we call the mind. Mind's function, therefore, is to grasp reality. Mind cannot exist if it does not have reality for its object on which to dwell. So if you say, I shall only vacate the mind, what you actually do is that you make non-existence the object of this mental activity, and which is a very unwholesome state. Some say, what do you do if I ask you, what do you do when you practice? I vacate my mind. Of course you don't vacate. Afterwards comes a sort of self-hypnosis in which you enter into a state where there is no content, but it does not mean that mind has been absolutely absent, free of thoughts. No. It is as it were, over all these things you have put a covering. All kinds of debris is there, and you have put a thin layer of earth so that you no longer see there is anything wrong there. You just think it is the clean earth. And that state cannot go on wholesomely for a long time. You have to give, therefore, to the mind an object. What is the object of meditation, or Dhyânam, as we say in Sanskrit? In English, as you know, meditation is thinking. Thinking on moral or spiritual or religious subjects. And of course you can think a lot of things. Only limitation is that you must not go beyond the boundary of these subjects. You should not, for example, begin to think of secular subjects. It should be moral, it should be spiritual, it should be religious. Therefore a great deal of literature. And also another thing is there, it is thinking. Now our idea of meditation is that it is not thinking. When meditation actually takes place, your thinking stops. What is it then if we don't think, and if it is not just vacating the mind? Well, it is accepted by us that there is another way of grasping reality, another way of coming in contact with reality directly. That way is the approach to reality with one's whole being. Sometimes I think it can be conveniently, not very accurately, expressed by saying that we try to feel reality, because the feeling seems to be closest to our whole being. We recognize that when we act, it is probably movement of our body. When we think, it is action in the brain or some part of the mind, but we do not feel our whole being involved in it. But when we are emotional, when we feel something, then we feel we ourselves are involved in it, and therefore sometimes it has been considered that the word feeling better expresses this approach to meditation than thinking. Only thing I must say, that it is not feeling in the way we recognize our feelings. There is a certain blindness about it, and there is a force about it, is true, and there is a sense of intimacy, it is true. Nevertheless, it does not have the sense of enlightenment as intellectual activity gives, as our thinking gives about a thing. And we miss it in our feeling. But when feeling becomes purified, when emotions are not impure, and are not driven by instincts and impulses, then they have a certain clarity of insight which surpasses even the understanding achieved by the finest function of the intellect. That state has to be reached. However, I am trying to describe what is the approach to reality in meditation. It is brooding over reality with your whole being. One question here must be answered. Is it not merely an effort at subjectivity? You think of something, it may not exist there, but you brood over it. Well, that is just merely brooding over the unreal, non-existent. And how can you achieve anything beneficial by dwelling on something which is unreal? But you see, the objects of meditation, as I have told you, either moral or spiritual. And you cannot say they are absent from you. Could you say that? If you meditate on God, God is existing everywhere. So that you brood over His being, here and now, within yourself or outside yourself, near yourself, well, you would not be really brooding over something which is non-existent. And if you think of moral virtues like compassion, kindness, devotion and so on, purity, these things, although you may say, I don't feel that I am pure enough. I don't feel that I am compassionate enough. And if I brood over it, I am doing on something unreal. My answer is, in everyone, all these virtues are latent. And when I say latent, I mean they are hidden. I do not mean they are remaining in germ form. They are there in their fullest form. Only they are covered. So that when you try to brood over them, you try to uncover them. So it is wholly realistic. You need not feel that you are dwelling on something which is non-existent and which is created by your own mind. Sometimes objects of meditation are also forms. Suppose a Christian devotee tries to meditate on the Christ, makes an image of Christ, a vision of Christ in his own mind and dwells upon it in meditation. And the question is asked, how am I to be sure that that form was the exact form of the Christ? Artists have painted him in various ways. Nobody knows what he himself looked like. The chances are that he didn't look like the pictures, even of the great masters. And the picture that I make within myself, then it may not be the form of the Christ as it was. They say that it really doesn't matter what form you make. You can take any probable form of Christ. You can take a picture as it has been drawn by a great master, or as you like it, or you can have a form created by yourself in your own mind. Eventually, it is said, the form changes until it becomes the right form. Why does it do so? Because you are not dwelling on the form alone in meditation, like a dead form drawn, say, on a blackboard or on a canvas, but you are also dwelling on the reality of Christ having that form. It is this dwelling on the reality of Christ that gradually, having developed, changes also the form, so that the form and the reality begin to become equal to each other. The form becomes the right form to express the reality of Christ. So eventually it rights itself, and you find that it is not just merely a self-created thing which you are trying to enliven by your imagination. Some have said that whatever you may say, yes, God exists everywhere, Christ exists everywhere because He is God. Nevertheless, what is happening within me is nothing but that I am thinking of something, and by thought I am creating a vision. And sometimes if we think on certain things too much, it becomes sort of objectified. We know, however, it is a hallucination and not real. And in these mystical visions also, we can conclude, by such intense thinking, we objectify, we make it live, but we know that it is nothing but a figment of our own imagination. I would not say that. Why should I not say that? Because you see, if you do have this vision rightly, I mean from our standpoint, it presupposes that this image-making faculty within you is gone. We make images, we see visions, unreal visions, only when we are in a lower state of existence. A poor man may dream of living in a wonderful house, having a wonderful car, traveling in Europe and going here and going there. As long as he is dreaming of those things, you know, probably he is rather poor and he cannot do those things. But when a person actually is doing those things, he has got money enough to do those things, he does not imagine, he just does it. Imagination therefore drops as you begin to proceed spiritually. Wonderful worlds open before you. Reality comes to you which you could never think of before, even in the height of your imagination. And therefore at that time, the tendency to form imaginations and fancies is destroyed within you. As a matter of fact, they tell you, in spiritual life one should not indulge in these kinds of fancies and imaginations because that is considered unspiritual. One should be highly realistic about everything, but not realistic in a sensuous sense. Our idea is that whatever we can see with the senses, that is the real. And beyond the senses is all unreality. Of course, that's a stupid idea of reality. That's not so. The real, truly speaking, is always supersensuous. However, wherever you are expected to dwell on the real and not on the imaginative. No, there are various reasons to think into which I cannot go this morning, that this is not man-made thing, it's an actuality, and afterwards we have a vision of it. Now you have to learn what aspect of God or what spiritual quality or ideal you should meditate upon from a person who is skilled to advise you on this point. That is very important, very, very important. Why is it important? Although it is true there is a great deal of similarity amongst many of us, it is also true that there are many differences and distinctions amongst us. The divine ideal is infinite, having infinite phases. Each person is different from the other person. I should not say diametrically different, but different. We have started our journey, nobody knows how many millions and millions and millions of years ago. Through this journey we have acquired so much experience, we have built up an outlook for ourselves which is unique in itself. Have you noted when you have studied the lives of saints and sages and prophets, how they differ from one another, although there is manifest a sense of unity amongst them? Each seems to be different in nature from the others. And that is what it should be. Each is growing, and as an individual, all his past history has conditioned him or fashioned him in a way that he would be satisfied with a vision of God which would be unique for him. And therefore, if you want to have fruitful practice, spiritual practice, you should be able to learn which is the vision of God you have been seeking. And that is where the expert helps you. He tries to bring it out of you. Make it come out. Either he will tell you directly that this is what you should think about. This is the way you should think about God. And however strange it might seem to you, if you follow it, and of course if your spiritual guide is an expert one, then you will find your mind proceeds very quickly towards it. It is as it are all the hidden forces of your mind, spiritual forces, suddenly are brought together and whole mind straightened out. Just as sometimes you find in a swampy place there are little trills of water here, there and so on. And when it goes and digs ditches so that all the water comes into one channel and you have a sweet stream. In the same way, all the spiritual forces within our own being, which have been running here and there in a state of dissatisfaction, by the teacher, by the specific instruction, is brought together. All these things are brought together, and you at once feel a great movement in your own mind towards the highest spiritual objective. That is what happens. Sometimes it takes a little time. Sometimes the teacher will give you temporary instruction to bring those things out, to make things stimulate, and then in course of time you find that unification has taken place. In some cases it is very clear what it should be. And you have to know, therefore, if you say, no, I cannot go to a teacher and I don't like going to a man, pray to God for that. If you say, I do not believe in God, then what is it you believe in? If you do not believe in anything, then the time has not yet come for you to undertake any spiritual practice. You see, you have to start with something. This is certainly a little over fastidiousness, and I think it is a sign of the spoiled nature. It's many people in the West are spoiled. Excuse me if I rebuke you from time to time. I hope you take it in good part. But you are spoiled people. You have taken that attitude, leaning backwards. Prove to me. Well, who cares to prove to you? I don't care anyhow. You see the trouble. You see, why do you think I have to prove anything to you? You are the one who is seeking knowledge. You hustle. You go and search. You be humble. If you need something, you do it. But you people have got into the idea, you always find the ministers and the priests running after you and begging you on bended knees, please do come to the church, do take this little piece of bread and eat this and do that. You see, they run after you. And you graciously accept the view that you might drop in for a few minutes on a Sunday. I say, mix. No. No. That way no good comes to anyone. Persons eagerly seeking, with their heart and soul, they cannot touch God. He runs speedier than the follower. God has a way. He does not want to be caught. And surrenders himself only when you do not let him go. You run after him all the time. Then he stops, and then he allows you to reach him. And you see, that is the way you realize something worthwhile. Otherwise, you go to a church, you go through in a kind of sleepy fashion, you go through some ceremony or some sermon and come home after putting a coin in the box. What good is it? Of course, you are out of mischief for the time being, maybe. But spiritually, not much good. Not much good. So you have to search it. So if you say, no, everything is negative, I don't care, I don't believe in it, I don't do this. Well, if that is your attitude, the time will come when you will revise yourself. You will find that you will search for it. There was a little boy quarreled at breakfast. He would not take his breakfast. Quarreled with his mother, he owned it. So the mother, to teach him a lesson, not to quarrel with his breakfast, she let him go. Well, time went on, hour passed, and the boy got awfully hungry. Yet he had his pride, So he took a piece of charcoal and wrote on the wall, if you ask me another time, once more, I shall come and take breakfast. We also shall be like the little boy. It is in that state of mind, in other words, when we are sincerely seeking and not just playing with the idea, then we would feel inclined to pray to God. Once a man came to Sri Ramakrishna, that he finds that he cannot believe in the existence of God. Sri Ramakrishna said, that's very good. Why don't you pray like this? God, I do not know whether you exist or not. I cannot be sure that you exist. I haven't got any sure understanding about, but if you do exist, please reveal yourself to me. You are so gracious. Even in that sincerity, he saw some hope. But in most cases, they just only want to talk, you see. Most people live on the plane of the senses with the brain working on finer things. And the self-division has been the tragedy of the modern age. So they talk high things and leave low things. That kind of division has not got any hope in it. And there is no use talking of religion or spirituality for them. A time will come, of course, when they will seek those things. That is the time. It is not being said that anybody's case is hopeless. No. But you see, a readiness has to be there. Or if you do not believe in God, you will find you believe in peace. You will believe in other things. You believe in compassion. You believe in service. Anything that is noble and ideal you feel. And if you do feel it, you can intensify it and accentuate it. You can also make that the object of meditation. The idea being that if anything is worth having and worth achieving, it shall not be separate from ourselves or outside of ourselves, but it shall be also a part of ourselves. If peace is my ideal, which I think is a noble ideal, it must be also a part of myself, and I can make peace the object of meditation. One Swami Vivekananda, while he was in this city, I think it was in the month of May, he went for 3 weeks for vacation in Camp Taylor. You know the place, in the Marin County. They have a state park now. Well, it was not much of a vacation. It rained heavily, month of May, that year. But one day he used to meditate, and several were there with him, and he would invite them to come to meditate. And one day he said, today I shall meditate on the heart of the lion. The heart of the lion, courageous, fearless heart, noble heart. He says, today I shall meditate on the heart of the lion. Yes, you could take any kind of virtues which is a sufficient ideal in itself and make it the object of meditation. One condition is that you must think that it is there really. Since meditation is done within, you must say there it is. Suppose a person is timid. I am a timid man, for example. Now, if I want to become courageous, then I could meditate in the heart of the lion. And I must say, however, I must think, however, that this lion's heart is within me. It is there already. Only then I can dwell upon it and feel its existence. Then it will become meditation. You see how different it is from just thinking? I must say, however, that thinking of good things also is beneficial. It may not be meditation in this sense in which you use the word meditation, but nevertheless it is beneficial, because thought also has its influence. If we think of low things, they have their effect on the mind. If we think of noble things, then such thought also has effect on the mind. But it will not have the meditative effect in our sense, in the sense in which I have defined meditation before. So whatever the object of meditation, inwardly you feel that it is actually there, and you let your whole feeling, which is combination of thought and feeling, dwell upon it. Your whole being dwells upon it. The plain fact is that all these different phases of our mind and consciousness, they appear different or separate from one another in this degenerate state. In the true state, all of them are found to be one function. And in India we have just used the word consciousness to indicate that. Chit. That's enough. You see. And all the other things are phases of this chit or consciousness. And the deeper the state of one's own being, the more unified all these states are. Their thoughts, their feelings, their power of action, all these things appear as one. In all great souls you will notice this. There is a certain spontaneity about them, out of which come great thoughts, great feelings, and great springs of action. And that is the natural state of man, the higher state. This is the inward thing. Now suppose here we just decide that for convenience of discussion, that we want to become conscious of God, we want to meditate on God in whatever way each one likes. We want to meditate on God because the word God expresses everything that is real, truly real, and all the noble qualities and attributes after which we aspire. So suppose we decide that the point to be discussed this morning, how we can continue this meditation without any break. I have called my subject continuous meditation, which would mean literally meditation 24 hours of the day. Now if you consider meditation from the exterior sense in which I have described it, as I have said before, only very few are found or have been found to have meditated for 24 hours of the day. That is, for 24 hours they have remained seated in the posture of meditation and they have meditated on. Well, you might almost say that very few have done that. In our orders we have seen some of our monks, they have so practiced that they can meditate for 7, 8, 10, 12 hours a day without any break. Day after day, year after year, they practice this. And of course that requires an awful amount of training to conquer the inconveniences and discomforts of the body so that the body does not interfere with it. One has to be awfully careful about food, awfully careful about his rest, whatever little rest he takes. The body becomes like a fine instrument and have to be kept in fine trim. And then, since it has been found the fatigue of the body oftentimes proceeds more from the state of the mind than any kind of physical activity, the mind has to be kept in such a way that it does not create any kind of fatigue. Certain thoughts will tire your nerves out, poison the nerves, poison the bloodstream. Other thoughts will purify it, literally do so. It is some people have taken hold of this idea, and they are talking about psychosomatic medicine, they are talking about faith healing and so on and so on. And like everything else in the West, when you get an idea, you just go to an extreme, at least in the beginning. Everything becomes a fashion. Well, when they got hold of idea that many diseases come from the mind, they have been talking about everything is from the mind, through the mind you can cure everything. That's wrong. Body also has a life of its own. Mind has a life of its own, body has a life of its own, and each is influencing the other, true. And if a diseased condition of the body has proceeded from mental condition, you can surely cure it by changing the mind, unless the body has suffered too much damage already. Or if something has come from bodily affliction, mind can resist a little, mind can bring about a slight difference, but you have to think that it is physical origin and you have to treat it physically. And so on and so forth. When you are a materialist, you think everything is from matter, from the body. So you try to do the body to anything to the body and you think thereby you will have a good mind. It doesn't happen that way. There should be a fine balance about it. But however, to come back to the point I was discussing, a great deal of fatigue is created by mental state. They have to be very careful in what they think, what they do not think. If you have to pay attention to the exterior things with whatever motive or whatever purpose, it does bring fatigue to the nerves. The nerves, if they are accustomed to spiritual thinking particularly, if you have accustomed your nervous system, your brain, to think spiritual thoughts, well, I know that we think spiritual thoughts with the mind, but mind works also, or has its impact on the nerves and the brain, even when you are thinking internally only. And so I am using rather loose language, but I hope you understand what I mean. Your whole system has become mental and physical, conditioned to spiritual thinking. Then if you have to think of exterior things, I say with whatever purpose, it might be with a very noble purpose, they get fatigued, they get tired out. If you take the brush of a great painter, with which he paints all wonderful things, you want to paint the wall of your house, well, what will happen to the brush? You see, it does get fatigued. You could not then say, I shall meditate 10 hours a day. You will disrupt your whole system. Well, of course, there is a compensation. If a man says, I know through meditation I shall be better, but through this attention that I have to pay to the outside thing, I shall be able to help unfortunate people, and I would rather do that. There is an ideal too, to serve others. And if you do that, then you find, although you suffer some difficulties, on the whole, spiritually you are not degraded. You may not be able to meditate 10 hours a day, But spiritually you are not degraded because another motive which also raises you upward has begun to function within you. Service to others, selflessness, that also is wonderful thing. But it remains a fact that when the mind and the nervous system and the brain have to be devoted to gross things, they have their effect. And this effect is fatiguing. Those who want to meditate for a long time, they have to be very careful about it. Swami Vivekananda, when he came to this country in 1893, and he was barely 30 years old at that time, and he had come here in the perfect state, spiritual state. And at that time, so the story goes, that he was scarcely conscious of outside things. Sometimes traveling in one place, get into the streetcar, he would forget to get off the streetcar. He would be so self-absorbed. And I told you once that through the kindness of some, I got hold of a photograph taken. I think that was the first photograph taken in this country of this one. A beautiful photograph. And there he looked so tender, so untouched by anything, you see, so inward-minded. I can understand how such a person really could not pay attention to the outside things. Well, you see, after he remained here, he returned to India in 1896, towards the end of 96, or beginning of 97. He returned. That was about 3 years, you should say. Well, he was so spent up, that he himself wanted to test whether, by giving so much of his mind and attention to external things here in the form of lecturing, instructing and so on, whether he has not lost his spiritual power and spiritual depth. And he went to Kashmir. He found Kashmir a very extraordinarily suitable place for meditation. In one of his letters he says that I have traveled in many places in the world. I have never found a place more congenial for the practice of yoga than Kashmir. And he wanted to establish a center there, however. But when he went and practiced, he found that everything has remained intact, that he has not lost anything. And he was rather pleased at that idea. But that is as regards the Swami Vivekananda. He did not lose his spiritual depth or his meditativeness, but his body paid the price for it. He just ruined his health as a result of it. So you see, this state comes to very few who can just sit there for hour after hour, hour after hour. Well, of course, if they have a long training, they can have long meditation. But here one factor we have not considered, and that is the psychological factor. You may train yourself in endurance so that you sit in one posture, however uncomfortable it begins, until the body yields. Yes, you can do that. You sit in a posture and then gradually you find your legs are getting numb. Then you find legs have become pins and needles. Then you find afterwards it has become again comfortable. You get as it as the second wind. But through such persistence, you find you can sit without disturbance longer and longer hours. Mind also, at first very cooperative. When you continue longer, it begins to play pranks upon you. It becomes restless or fatigued. If you have patience, you hold on, then comes again the second wind to the mind. Mind again becomes alert, again becomes quiet, and you can continue sometime more, quite some time more. And through such practices you begin to become able to meditate longer and longer. But the psychological factor is the important thing. What is it? You see, it is not right to think, correct to think that when a person's mind has turned towards God or spiritual things, that his whole mind has turned. No. If in the mind there have been unspiritual tendencies there, desire for worldly pleasures, worldly things, or if he has got unhappy experiences in the past, and the memories are there, impressions have been left, and those things are there, If, in other words, there is strength in these desires, however latent, then meditation has a tendency of bringing them up into life again. Those tendencies become again energized. And the regrettable part about it is they do not come in their naked form at first. They do not come to you in the desire for just worldly enjoyment or sensual enjoyment, because then if they were to come in that form, you will avoid them and you will try to suppress them and conquer. But they begin to get mixed up with noble motives, and they appear in forms which seems to have a spiritual justification. And if you are not an utter fool, you see, or if you are not too independent, you will listen to the advices given by those who know. And you will remember the things which you have read in the scriptures, and you say, that is it. No, I should be careful about it. However noble it might look, it is not really noble, and I shall be cautious about it. I shall suppress it. And if you are cautious at the right time, you can avoid any kind of disaster. If you yield to them, then you are really in difficulty. This is it. Meditation is like a tremendous churning power. It is a churning to the layers of the mind, into the layers of the mind which are ordinarily inaccessible to thought and consciousness. And whatever is lying there, buried, those things are churned upwards and come into the conscious plane. Therefore they say that one should not undertake meditation in this sense, in an exterior and interior sense, as I have described. In this strenuous sense, until the mind has become considerably pure. There are in the Upanishad instructions given. This instruction shall not be given to a person who has not performed such and such a ceremony, has not gone through such and such a ritual. Vedic rituals, Vedic ceremonies, which are, although spiritually beneficial, are nevertheless external actions. In all rituals you will find there is a great deal of movement. You offer flowers, you have to lift the flowers from the tray. Offer flowers, offer incense, light the candles, and so on and so forth, interspersed with some meditation there. Through these practices gradually you will find mind becomes purified, and then all those latent things there come, not altogether, not in this strong form. Little by little they come up and you can destroy them. You are able to cope with them in that state, and slowly the mind has become purified. There are many other things which help in this purification of the mind. All these things help in bringing about the state of mind which produces this meditativeness. And therefore, one should not just say, I shall practice to meditate, I shall sit for 5 hours a day and I will not bother about, I shall practice this. Yes, by a little practice you will succeed, but you don't know what will happen in the future. Sometimes these things come with such violence that you make years before you are able to quiet again. And they therefore say that you always be guided by expert advice. That's the sure thing. And experience of India has said that the sincere and serious spiritual practice should be always under the guidance of someone. If he cannot do anything else except he can caution you, and that itself is a great service. Well now, if you cannot do that kind of continuous meditation, what kind of continuous meditation can you do? I have to say that you can do some kind of continuous meditation, not with the same intensity throughout the day, but with less or more intensity, and not with always the exterior calmness and stillness and isolation, which is, of course, a part of meditation as it is usually understood. That kind of continuous meditation can be done, and that should be really the objective of anyone who is seriously interested in spiritual life. May I tell you something in caution? Never say to yourself, I cannot give my whole day to spiritual things. I have duties to do. I have to do housework. I have to go to office. I have to study. I have to do this. I have to do this. I can do a little meditation, a little spiritualism, and rest I shall continue as I have been doing. Never say that to yourself. If you ask me, then what are you to do? Give up all this? No, we are not to give up all these things. You first of all should check whether these are the things you have to do. If you find that these are the things you have to do, these are your duties and your necessities, then spiritualize them. You see, everything can be done in many different ways. I often told you of a postman. A mailman was to deliver mails from door to door. And he composed a song and he used to sing that song. And he used to think that he was knocking at every door for the Lord to open the door for him. Now just imagine what a sweet thing he made of his drudgery. He was a spiritual man. Rabindranath Tagore knew him, mentioned him. It was in Shanti Niketan, that was the post office, and he was a mailman there. But he used to go out into the distant villages, miles and miles in the countryside. But that was his way. But isn't that his way? Really, whatever we are doing, if we think calmly, everything is being done for the Lord. If you shop, if you sweep the street, if you cook, if you work in a factory, all these actions go to some living beings. To some living beings. And every living being is an embodiment of divinity. Can you deny it? Have you searched enough into the very center of every living thing, and have you found what is there, dwelling there? In the center of everything, there is the indwelling Lord, who has been called the soul of the soul. Perfect being, God. And you see, everything that is done, of course we are in such a hurry. When we see food enter into the mouth, you think, the man has eaten. But that is only the beginning of it. Food goes, then the whole thing takes a little time and goes through a long process until it reaches him who is in the center of that being, called man. If you have a guest, don't think that the moment the man has eaten, he looks pleased, well fed, a glistening face, you see, and you think that you have fed the man. No. Think, you have fed the Lord. You say, God does not have to eat food. How do you know it? God does not have to eat food. All kinds of superstitious ideas we have built up out of our ignorance. Everything is God breathes, God eats, God walks, God handles things. Everything is of God. You have to learn to think in that new way. Then you find that whatever you do, provided you know that it is right and necessary, a duty, you will be able to spiritualize. So you see, net result of it is that all 24 hours goes in the service of the Lord. It is really a meditation, a form of meditation. No, there is no division and you must get rid of it. If you want to become established in continuous meditation, you must get rid of it. And do you think you can do it less than that? I can see that sometimes you cannot give so much attention to God at other times of the day. But your heart craves to give full attention to Him every moment of the 24 hours. That is continuous meditation. Externally you are not meditating. There was a disciple. He went to a very great teacher, and the great teacher told him, meditate with open eyes. Well, now, you know, that's rather a difficult process. He said, how am I to do that? How am I to meditate with open eyes? Of course, you can do it. You keep your eyes open and you become abstracted, and inwardly you see things, the eyes don't see anything outside. That's one form. Well, what is the benefit of it? Why should he not close his eyes? Better he closes his eyes. But however, if he cannot close his eyes, as in the presence of other people, he might meditate in this way, and people will, maybe he's dead dreaming. His eyes look funny. But there is another meaning. As time went on, he began to discover there is another meaning. The meaning is that all this that is present before him is the Lord Himself. Just as a person meditating closes his eyes and sees the object of meditation within his own heart, say the form of the Christ, luminous form, vision of the Christ, or Sri Krishna, or feels this luminous presence of the Lord and dwells upon it with his whole being. Here also he opens his eyes and there is this vast universe which is really nothing but the form of the Lord. God alone present before him in the form of this universe. Can you say it is not he? Do you think that universe is the place from which he has departed? How can the infinite depart from any place? He is everywhere, we know it. We call him the omnipresent one, the all-pervasive one. And if it is so, that this is what I am saying, is the Lord himself. So the disciple understood, that is what he meant. Whatever I look at is the Lord. But merely saying that would not do, although you begin by saying, because you have to first of all be convinced of the idea. But afterwards you have to feel that it is so. You must not say, I am looking at man. I am looking at a man or a woman or a bird or a beast or stone. No, all this is of the Lord. It is Lord partly as well as fully. Every part is the Lord himself, and the whole is also the Lord himself. As the spirit moves, sometimes you think of one person as the Lord, sometimes you think the whole thing as the Lord. And in this way, that also can be of meditation. We cannot deny it. Do you have to just close your eyes to see it? But of course, it is not as easy as that. Every action also to have to be spiritualized. I am talking to you. I say, yes, you are all God, embodiments of God. But while I am talking, if I say, well, look at these fools, I shall tell them a few things today. You see, if I don't spiritualize my speech, if I do not say that what I am saying is really an offering at the feet of the Lord, if I don't do that, then of course there is a self-division. I undermine what I try to do, and of course then I do not achieve anything. Everything has to be converted. Eating has to be converted, speaking converted into spiritual something. Hearing, seeing, everything has to be spiritualized. That's very important. By the way, I mentioned that there are those who want to meditate very intensely. There is a danger that latent instincts will come up and assume strong proportions. This action, this spiritualization, is a wonderful antidote to this tendency. It's a wonderful assurance against that fear. You spiritualize, you will find very soon all the instincts that are within you, unspiritual instincts, they also have become spiritualized. That is, they become harmless. In our books on yoga, they say, they're just as seeds. If you scatter them in the ground, in the soil, they will sprout and will create more seeds and go on endlessly. But if you fry the seeds before you scatter them on the earth, then they cannot sprout anymore. In the same way, when you spiritualize the world, everything that goes on in the world, everything that you engage in, thereby not only you make your present experience harmless, spiritually harmless, but also the past also harmless. How? You see, suppose something has produced a wrong impression, worldly impression in your mind in the past. When a similar experience has come in the present and you have spiritualized it, thereby when this old impression and memory would come, you will find that also has changed meaning for you and no longer would be able to harm you. You see, once you have to face these things and you have to, as it were, fry those things in the fire of knowledge. When you look at things as they really are, that becomes, as it were, a fire of knowledge. Dhyâna Agni, fire of knowledge. And everything becomes burnt. And once you have done one thing of the same way, you will find the past and the future, all of them become thereby changed. So you do this. And then, having spiritualized everything that you have to do in course of the day, you are now ready to have continuous meditation. How do you go about it? First of all should meditate in both its interior as well as exterior aspect as much as he can do. As much as he can do personally through his own ability and through propitious circumstances. If it allows him only half an hour every day, let him practice this half an hour. If he can meditate 1 hour, he has time for that, he should meditate 1 hour. Or suppose he has 5 hours, but if he meditates 5 hours in this way, then all his latent instincts and spiritual instincts will become aggravated, then he shouldn't. He will have to exercise his judgment, or he should take advice from people and know how much he can really do. At most, all right, let him do, but he must do something. Why is it necessary to do these things? Because they come in contact with the truth, pure truth, unadulterated. When I remove the world of the senses by closing my eyes, sitting still and forgetting the world, that is what meditation means. When exterior posture is of that calmness and steadiness, we try to come in face to face with God, or the ultimate reality, without any other thing intervening there. You may spiritualize the world, but until you have become fully established in such spiritualization, feeling that everything is spiritual, you will also at the same time feel that they are mental as well as physical. It is very hard to get rid of that. So meditation brings us, this daily practice of meditation brings us face to face with God, forgetting everything else. That's very necessary. How really would you know what God in himself is unless you eliminate sometime every day everything that is not God, that is non-eternal. So this is very important. Times you have to fix, try to maintain the sameness of time and also sameness of place if possible, because these things are very helpful in strengthening meditation. And you have to know when you can do. Generally it is said, dawn, then noon, evening and midnight, these are the propitious hours. That dawn is propitious, we know. Mind is fresh after the sleep. The world is fresh. World has not started moving and thinking and fighting and so on. And it is of course silent. At that time, if one makes a habit, mind becomes very quiet. Further, because you have meditated in the morning, throughout the day you will have a spiritual impetus because of that meditation. They say that breakfast should be the best meal. Yes, soul also should have its breakfast. You give it them throughout the day, you will feel strong and not get worn out. But if you cannot, you will have to do the second best. Now this meditation you should do. Then there are other subsidiary practices of the same nature or almost similar nature, this you should do. What are those subsidiary practices? These are it. In importance, in their several importances, these are it. Next to meditation is what is called the practice of japa, or repetition of the name of God, or some sentences which indicate this highest truth. Usually you receive such words or such phrases from an illumined teacher. If you do it, then you are benefited. It is as it were, you have got a spark of fire or maybe burning coals which you have put in a pile of wood, and then easily it bursts into flame. Always it is said that you have to borrow your light from other lighted lamps. I don't know. Some have taken the view that it is the only way you can have the light. You have to borrow it light from somebody's light. Ananya prokte gatiratra nasti. Even from ancient times they have said, unless you learn it from another person, there is no other way for you. Some say, no, that's not necessary. God is everywhere, He is in my heart, from that truth would come. Yes, that also seems very reasonable theoretically. I discussed it, I think, last Sunday, so I don't have to go over the ground again. But practically speaking, they have found that unless you get it from somebody else, you don't have it. So you might get it. And so they say that it has got a tremendous potency if you get it from a qualified teacher. And there again the question is, what name would you repeat? Words have their value, words have their meaning associated with them. It should be a name of God in the aspect in which you are seeking to know Him. You have to have an equivalent word. And you may not be able to find that word, the teacher may. These are all the considerations. However, the thing is, you practice japa, as we say in Sanskrit. Repeat it. It's a most wonderful practice, and sometimes I think from a practical point of view, it is the best spiritual practice considered. Meditation requires a condition, good condition of the body and the mind to have concentration. Otherwise you struggle with the mind, you sit in meditation, and you struggle, and you find by the time your time is up, you are just tired out and no peace, nothing has come. Although I am not suggesting that you should not go through that practice in spite of all these difficulties, because otherwise how will you be established in it? You have to struggle your way through it. But you see, practice of japa does not require that much concentration, but it calls for continuity. What kind of continuity? Every empty space of your day shall be filled with this repetition of the name. Just as if there is a vessel filled with all kinds of pebbles and stones, small stones, and then you pour water into it. Water has the ability of filling every little space between the stones and the pebbles. Doesn't leave any empty space there. Repetition of the name shall be like this. Mind is engaged in one duty. The moment the mind is released from it, that moment at once it plunges into the repetition of the name. That comes. You say, well, if I don't remember, how shall it be? Well, I'm not talking about doing it through remembrance. A time comes when mind automatically does it. Automatically does. Just as if you have a severe headache, somebody gives you a sedative, you have fallen asleep. But headache has not been cured. The moment you wake up, your head begins to ache. It's an unpleasant illustration to give, isn't it? Well, in a good sense, it is something like this. The moment your mind is free from some duty, at once becomes conscious the urgency of the mind. And mind goes on repeating him. It is as it were. What is repeating? Is it as calling him, whom you want to come, whom you want to meet, but who is distant from you, absent from you. But calling him, urgently calling him. And you do not just repeat the name, you also think of him as you have been asked to think about him, as being real. And so, when you practice those things, you see what is happening? All the waking hours, except those hours in which you are engaged in duties, have been filled with yearning for God, with dwelling upon God. You may not call it meditation in the highest sense, in the truest sense of the word, but you must call it a partial meditation, because when you get established in that practice, this is its benefit. You see, we used to hear that in the olden days there are people, they had no other instrument, they did not have any guns or anything, but they had stuffs, staves you might call them. We used to call them lathi, made out of bamboo. There is a kind of thick, solid, so thick. They grow up. Well, they season it and so on and tall, and then know all intricacies of whirling it. And of course they can strike with it too. We used to hear, and sometimes demonstrations are given, that even if they used to shoot a gun at that man, he would so whirl the stave around himself that the bullet would not reach the man. The bullet would be obstructed by this whirling stave, will be thrown out. Mind becomes protected like this through the practice of japa. From all directions, sense impressions are coming, from within, from without. In the course of the work that you do, in the course of contact with other people, contact with the world of the senses, all kinds of unspiritual impressions are coming. If they can reach your heart, they will lodge themselves there. Deep impression will be left, and you will find a long time before you can throw them off, if you can throw them off at all. But if you practice japa, it is like this whirling stave round yourself, round your mind. And whatever impressions come, they may strike against this, but thrown off. Literally so. It reaches you, but something rises from your mind and throws it off. See what a wonderful state. And inside this state, this protected state of the mind, there is a calmness, an exaltation, a sense of the presence of God. That is the result of the practice of japa. Then when you are not doing anything, you are not moving anything, it becomes meditation. You don't have to pay any attention to the outside. You are sitting calmly. You practice this repetition, you find it has become japa. The consciousness of God, the presence of God, your whole mind dwells upon it. Enjoy it. Meditation. You see how the two are related? Then next in importance to that is devotional singing or repetition of hymns. Devotional singing, if you are musical, you may hum a tune or you can sing loudly as you find. Those days say that mind becomes very concentrated, very uplifted by those things. But other practices of similar nature have been found. No doubt you have that in English and other Western languages. We have a lot of that in Sanskrit. Innumerable hymns have been written of various natures, embodying the highest philosophical statements as well as the devotional outpourings of the heart of a devotee. Sometimes you are in devotional mode. You like to repeat some of those things, and as you repeat them, within you comes that feeling about God and therefore imminent presence of God. Sometimes you repeat a philosophical poem to yourself, and it becomes a sort of meditation. You repeat and repeat and repeat. You don't have to do it loudly. You can do it mentally, or you can do it whisperingly or very low voice to yourself. And you find then that your mind dwells on this thought and becomes gradually drawn together into it, concentrated on it, and becomes therefore meditative on this truth. It has been found of exceeding help to those who have practiced this. You find your own, you can compose your own hymns. You get sentences here and there, you make it repeat to yourself. It has been considered exceeding helpfulness. All of these have been considered as superior spiritual practices. Then others, they have liked ritualistic practices, external worship. And if they like it and if the opportunity of it, they should do it. Generally worship is done twice a day, morning and evening, or noon and evening. And if you have time, you do it twice. If you not, you do it once. But if you do it, if our mind is externally tuned, we find an external worship of a great help to us. Well, if you feel inclined, if your nature is really responsive to such practices, you can do it. Then what has happened? You find all your leisure moments, that is the moments in which you are not engaged in so-called worldly duties, every moment has become filled with aspiration for God, and sometimes even meditation on God, dwelling on God in lesser or greater degree of intensity. There remain therefore two other spaces of your day to be filled. One while you are acting, working, engaged in activities. At another time, the other one is sleep, period of sleep. While you are working, this is what you do at first. At the end of every work, you offer it to the Lord. This I offer to you. For various justifications are there. We could not work unless the strength and wisdom of God are not within us. The hands won't move unless the Spirit of God moved this hand. I am speaking, I shall suddenly get stuck in the middle of a sentence unless the Lord's support goes away from me. We have been studying in the Upanishads, the Kena Upanishad, this very thing, how everything that takes place does so because of the presence and because of the impulsion of God. Otherwise nothing could take place. The eyes won't see, the mouth would not speak, the hands would not move, feet would not walk, the mind would not think, none of those things, that we won't be able to breathe. None of these things would be possible unless the Lord were there. And this can be proved by analysis. You go on analyzing everything that you do, you will find back of it there is this one being, who is the substance and who is the power behind everything that we do, everything that is. So it is just right to think, it's correct to think that the Lord, it is by your power that I have done everything and all these things I offer. Yat kritam yat karishyami tat sarvam na maya kritam tvaya kritam tu phalabhuktam eva madhusudana. There was a great devout king in ancient India, in the south of India. Kulashekara was his name, and he wrote a beautiful poem to the Lord called Mukundamala Stotra. And in that there is this one verse which I have just quoted. That which has been done, that which I shall do, all this has not been done by me and shall not be done by me. All this has been done by you, O Lord, and therefore thou art the enjoyer of the fruit thereof. There is just pure statement of truth. It was not an outpouring of insubstantial devotion, fully substantiated by fact, yet of course the outpouring of devotion. And he just offered everything. Every action should be offered to the Lord, not seeking the fruits. If you give it, then you don't expect anything in return. You do not want to be an Indian giver. No reproach to Indians and use of an American phrase. You do not want to give and take it back again in another form. All of us want to do it. If we give a little to the Lord, we want 100 times more in return from Him. And if He doesn't give it, what strange, loathsome creatures we are. Hateful. See, and we become proud of ourselves. No, when you give to the Lord, give to the Lord. Don't expect anything in return. Why should you expect anything in return? If you are a human being, you will give, give. In the giving is your satisfaction. Tell the Lord, Lord, I want to give, please accept. He says, don't you want something? No, I don't. This is my pleasure, this is my joy, this is my gratification that I am able to give to you. These actions of mine, these thoughts of mine, this body, this mind of mine, this soul of mine, all this I give to you. Accept. Nothing do I give. This giving is the justification. This giving is the thing which I want. If you want the air, all that you have to do is to vacate a place where you want the air. You don't, after having vacated this place, you do not have to go on searching for air and pump air into it. When you have emptied yourself of all this debris and all this nonsense, this most exquisite presence fills it of itself. You don't expect it, it just happens. But this is the explanation. Yes, so when you offer everything to the Lord, gradually you will find this sense comes. I am not the doer. It's the most exquisite sense. When you speak and you recognize that you are not speaking, somebody else is speaking from deep, deep down in your own being. When apparently you are working and yet you feel you are not working, somebody else, some exquisite being is working. That's the most wonderful experience. And it is only then that you understand why this body and mind are active, that they make some sense. We look at this world, having known a little philosophy, and you find this one altogether unsatisfactory, a jumble of nonsense. But when we know things in their right way, when everything makes meaning, everything is wonderful. Action of the body, action of the mind, all these things seem as wonderful. And so you get established in it. And then you back to your mind, there is the thought of God and presence of God always. Action then is no longer action. Through activity, there is a deep consciousness of the presence of God, stimulating your senses, working through them, and engaging you, not your action, His action. So then this space becomes filled with the consciousness of God. As regards sleep, when these things have been accomplished, you will find sleep is only of the body, and quieting of the mind it is, and in that quietness of the body and the mind, there is the luminous presence of God. Sleep becomes converted into a sort of meditation, spontaneous, involuntary meditation. And literally I tell you, when you reach that condition, and then when you wake up, you feel you have awakened, come out of very profound meditation. Sometimes it seems that state has been even deeper than your meditation, hours of meditation in the waking state. So through these practices, long practices, one after the other, and establishing yourself spiritually in every aspect of your existence, you find there has come a state in which every minute is filled with the consciousness of God. Whatever might be your external state, whether you're sitting quietly or busy in some activity, every moment has become saturated with the consciousness of God. You see, then comes minimum satisfaction in spiritual life. For one who has been convinced that God is the only truth, only meaning and only reality in existence, and yet he has not been able to reach him, while whichever way he finds something other than God. And it seems like as if he is dwelling in a prison house, and he wants to become free and reach him who is considered to be present everywhere. For him, this state begins to bring the first installment of satisfaction. Now he knows he is free. He said he is above all obstructions. He is not free altogether, but he said he is above. And now he knows that every hour has been consecrated by the presence of God. All that he has to do is intensify this practice more and more. Sri Ramakrishna often used to say that when a person has reached that state, the Lord so does that his external activities are curtailed. A change comes. Such a change comes, you see, the world is a system after all. If we believe there is a God behind it, it is bound to be a system. And there are such subtle spiritual laws because of which, when a person has become established in God like this, then external preoccupations and distractions are minimized. Gradually he has become freed from all those things, so that he can now, if he so wants, calmly and quietly think of God alone. Obligations are taken away from him. He no longer has duties in the world. No longer does he have to run after this and after the other thing in course of his beautifulness. And therefore he is now able to sit quietly, and from morning till night he can just think of him in various ways unobstructed. Yes, when a person lives that life, others come to him seeking God and say, here is a man of God, consecrated to him. Every moment of his life consecrated to him. There was a saint, he was a soldier at first in the British army, and then he gave up the army. Very extraordinary life his was. And then he lived his life in a hermitage. He was a very kind-hearted man, and he used to practice a great deal of hospitality in his retreat. Whoever would come, he would invite him to dinner. Of course, many people would come, hundreds and hundreds of people, but he had nothing. But such was the economy of the divine providence, that there are some grocers who would supply whatever he needs. At the end of a month or 2 months, he would come with his bill, and he would say, either he would have people who would bring gifts, money gifts or something, would give. Even as he said, please wait a few days. Invariably, what he needed would come, without any effort from him. Yes, there comes that state. See. I told you this story the other day of a saintly man who did not believe that the Lord carries the necessities of a devotee to him. And the Lord came and proved it to him that the Lord physically brings things to a devotee when he needs them. There is a literal truth in that. Yes, there is a law by which then all his needs are met. It is another kind of living. And then one can truly say that he is living the life of continuous meditation. Until then, struggle. Do not make any compromise. I am just saying this. It is not meaning that we are to be lazy, but I mean we do our duty, whatever our intelligence is, our best senses we do, but we spiritualize it. And when we have done that, and when the remaining moments we have consecrated consciously to God, through meditation, through repetition of His name, through singing of hymns, or repetition of hymns, or through other practices such as ritualistic worship, study of the scriptures is also a very wonderful practice. When by all these means we have saturated our leisure moments with God, and through offering of the fruits of action to the Lord, our working hours have been dedicated to Him, then there will come an unity, spiritual unity on our existence, and we shall find every moment is really a form of meditation for us. Then after that we just intensify this process, and it becomes literally a life of meditation. Whether our eyes are open or eyes are closed, whether are physically active or physically we are quiet, it doesn't matter. Whatever the form of our activity, it doesn't matter. Every moment becomes an hour of meditation, and if we are not externally meditative, internally we are always meditative. antariksham shantihi, prithivi shantihi, आपः शान्तिः औषधयः शान्तिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिः विश्वे देवाः शान्तिः ब्रह्म शान्तिः सर्वं शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः सा मे शान्तिरेधि Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace is in heaven, peace is in the sky, on the earth and in the waters. The herbs, the plants and the trees are all full of peace. The gods are peaceful. Everything in the universe is pervaded by peace. May this eternal, universal peace enter our soul and being. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.